So this is Café Insights with Andrew Vine in conversation with Simon Walker. Welcome.
Thank you.
Today we're at the Shangri-La Cafe. It's a great opportunity just to have a chat to you a little bit about the area of your expertise and to share some insights with us. I mean, your expertise is in the area of employee engagement. You co-founded Talent Smoothie in the UK to focus exclusively on Gen Y. So what was the impetus for that? I mean, what got you going? What got you to realise that companies kind of needed to invest in the under 30s?
Well, a number of reasons. We were working a lot in the sort of team and leadership development space, and we were increasingly hearing stories of frustration that particularly older leaders and managers were having, potentially misinterpreting the behaviour of their younger colleagues. And whilst we always we thought that clearly people in time immemorial have misunderstood young people, we thought perhaps there's something to this, and that combined particularly with the advent of widespread technology, true globalisation, which was creating a much richer picture. We felt that was certainly an area that we really wanted to work in.
Right. I know that Gen Ys have quite a reputation of being very demanding in terms of what they want and what they expect, and I think this is quite frustrating for the Gen X's of this world. The managers who see them as being spoilt and troublesome and hoping perhaps that they will grow out of it, just like teenagers will kind of grow up. And what is that really the wrong way of looking at Gen Y?
I think it probably is, and in fact one of the key findings in our research was not about the differences between Gen Y, but actually the similarities. And what I mean by that is when actually looked at the things that motivate and engage people, or Generation Y rather, are all the things that actually in reality motivate and engage everybody of any era. It's just that Generation Y expect and demand these things, where perhaps other generations were conditioned because of the times they grew up in not to expect them. So I think it's more about expectation rather than they're not an alien species. It's they're human beings like the rest of us.
Right. I mean, the whole attitude on how they view work is more as something to do as opposed to somewhere to go. I mean, this poses quite a few challenges for companies, in terms of getting it right to retain them, or perhaps even to attract them in the first place. So what do you think companies can best do to offer Gen Y that kind of freedom or the environment they desire?
Well, actually, I think the first step is that if their performance management is appropriate in that they truly manage the outcome and not necessarily the process. It's not the time that they're there in the office, it's actually the outcome. Then they'll find that their managers and the rest of the organisation then suddenly becomes relaxed, much more relaxed about because the outcome is being delivered, about people working from home, working from Starbucks, using Facebook and other social media in the office. So I think it starts with understanding that actually we pay people for the outcomes they deliver, not necessarily the time they put in the office.
And I know you talk, about, like you say, they're like us. They kind of want the same things. Perhaps it comes down to good communication and just good management at the end of the day. Just good old simple, understanding who you're working with and having a dialogue.
Yes, absolutely. Like any form of diversity of thought is good. It gives us, challenge of ideas and new ideas and ways of looking at the world. But in order to manage any sort of diverse population, we really need to have a range of leadership approaches, being able to understand what really makes different people tick, and flex our style accordingly, a coaching, mentoring kind of style. As you say, Andrew, great leadership, great teamwork is applicable across any generation. It's just perhaps even more applicable with Generation Y because their propensity to actually just leave more readily than perhaps other generations.
Yeah, prepared to have a whole string of jobs on their CV. It was kind of abhorrent to us, seeing 10 jobs already, and that normally files an application in the bin for me. Am I wrong to do that?
I think you'll find that increasingly people are having multiple careers in different directions. So people will no longer, in the old days, people were loyal to one employer. They had a job for life. They started at the beginning and left it hopefully at retirement. Generation X, loyalty to a profession, so they might have half a dozen jobs, but stay accountants or engineers or whatever it might be. Increasingly, we're seeing with Generation Y, no loyalty to any organisation or even any profession, and they'll do a bit of marketing and a bit of accounting and a bit of something else. So I think the modern world is a portfolio, pluralistic sort of career mentality, and smart organisations will realise that if they get some great contributions from talent for 3 or 4 years or a couple of years, and they get a great job, actually that's fine,
right,
and just live with it.
Yeah, I mean, here we are in Asia, and I know you've done a couple of studies a couple of years ago looking at Gen Y and what they want from work. And the study's been one in Europe and one in Asia as well. So is it any different in Asia? We've got different lessons to learn here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the key starting points with looking at generational diversity is to understand the mechanism that drives it. And clearly age and life stage is the starting point. Our preferences and attitudes change as we grow older, but the other big driver is this, particularly in the teenage years, are conditions and experiences. Now, clearly, the conditions and experiences we grow up with, those are economic or cultural or social, are clearly very different around the world. And particularly diverse in the Asia-Pac region. So, if you've grown up in China with incredible economic growth and huge social change in the last 10 years, that will be different than if you grew up in the US. So I think we do have to look at each individual market and perhaps tailor our approaches to the people we see in front of us.
And even within Asia, because Asia is not a homogeneous kind of entity, it must be quite different, perhaps, looking at the staff in Singapore as we are here, or Hong Kong, which is a regional management centre for international companies at least, and then places like China and India, where it might be manufacturing or service outsourcing and the lower end. So have your findings identified big changes?
Yeah, so let's take India as an example. So in India you'll have baby boomer and Gen X managers who find themselves less assertive and less confident than they're highly educated, highly technical, highly globally aware Gen Y staff, and they're often, as you say, they're in big outsourcing operations, many thousands of people, and the Gen X and baby boomer managers just aren't equipped with the leadership skills in order to get the best out of these people and get them to stay. So I think there's we actually have to look at all of the generations in these different regions and different locations and take them on a case-by-case basis and give them the support and encouragement and environment that's going to help them get the best out of the Gen Y staff.
Yes, and I know we've made comparisons between the developed and the developing world, and it's kind of interesting that the level of awareness then amongst young staff with the ability to kind of know what's going on in the West and the East is going to be a phenomenal advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. So the internet is the common factor across it that joins all Gen Y together. There are clearly shades of grey in that as well, and variation. So, for example, in China, Facebook isn't the predominant force that it is in other markets. It'll be Renren or QQ or some other social media, and but it's certainly true that that mainland Chinese Gen Y know an awful lot about everybody, global, the other global Gen Y more about Western Gen Y than actually just Western Gen Y know about them, and so those sort of some of those predominant Western values will be transmitted via the internet and create expectations and preferences that perhaps their older managers will find threatening. And then
we've got a new batch of teenagers coming through, and I think you refer to them as Gen Z.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what are we in store for? Because we're going to start recruiting these guys in the next 5-6 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're Gen Z, roughly those born since the mid 1990s, currently teenagers. already a critical consumer group. If they've got money in their pockets, and so if you're in the consumer business, your marketeers are already all over them. I think if you look at the conditions and experiences they grew up in or they are growing up in, that will help us inform us on what is going to be important to them. I think that certainly in some of the European and Western economies that are struggling, they're going to have a different attitude to finance. Yeah. They're growing up in some slightly straightened time, less of an issue in Asia Pac, but certainly an issue in Japan, say. I think the environment sustainability is a very big driver. Suddenly they have grown up where environment, global warming is a mainstream agenda item. It's on the news. The world leaders talk about it, all the time. They have recycling in their kitchens since very, very young. So I think the environment, that will be a big issue. Yeah. But I think ultimately it is about technology. From 5 years of age, these guys have been using technology in every element of their life, schooling, communicating with their friends, and I think the way of doing things on the internet, the way of life on the internet, will inform their expectations and preferences about how they want to work in adult life.
This is fascinating. I know that you, in addition to giving speeches, you actually do quite a lot of kind of seminars and workshops for companies, and you go to their offsites and give them a bit of an extended time thinking through these issues. What would be a couple of the main things that you would just isolate as things for companies really to think about?
I think, first of all, it's really important that to talk about this topic, we have to talk in stereotypes, and of course they're dangerous. Yeah. And so the first thing we'd always recommend groups do is really understand the particular Gen Y or generational groups that they are working with in their industry, in their location, in their context, because it will be a rich picture. And then look at perhaps their wider strategic aims and think about, well, is there a talent gap? Is there is there a retention? What are the actual issues that they're wrestling with? And then formulate a plan to do quite simple things. I mean, actually, the tools, the levers you have to play with are really simple things. Good leadership and management, looking at your organisational structure, questioning, the way we've always done things. And the good news is actually most of the things that Gen Y demand, actually the rest of us want anyway. We'd all appreciate a bit of flexibility in the way we run our lives. Not completely flexible necessarily, but I don't think it's not revolution, it's evolution. It's small changes that we can make all our working lives much easier by addressing some of these things.
Simon Walker, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks.
Now you take two previous